The Talking Machine World is a magazine you probably know or came across. I use it a lot because there is a lot of information there. It's an American magazine that was aimed for people interested in phonographs, but mostly for people who were having a shop and they were selling the machines. That's why I came across it, because when I was trying to date some of my machines, if they were advertising that magazine, it gave me an idea of the year. So in this, the Talking Machine World, there are many articles, and there are many articles, of course this is America, but still, who are making statistics, and they are asking themselves things about where do you sell the machines, what strategies, what can you do to sell more machines, and this kind of stuff. A very interesting article is called "Do Men or Women Prove the Bigger Purchases of Talking Machines or Records Outfits?" So they are really asking themselves. And I've just highlighted a few quotes from the article, which is very interesting in general. And in general, they say that women are the biggest buyers, but harder to sell, for instance, in Boston. Or, well, some people don't really know. Percentage of women varies. Husbands only safety valve on prices. Yeah. Women most responsible for trade growth in Twin Cities. Women do the buying, but the man help in Milwaukee. So in general, in these articles, we can see that all these dealers, they agree that most of the machines, they were sold to women. Even when they throw some numbers, for instance, in Winnipeg, that they say 75%. In some cases, they say around 70%. And this is when talking about the machines. There are other articles, for instance, that is like in the same light, the ladies, God bless them as a force in the dealers' trades. And then the whole article is about that, about how all the ladies are the ones buying the machines, so we should be thankful, and what can we do to sell better for the women. So there are several articles in that line, in these things. And this is about machines. But they all agree that when talking about records, like who is buying the records, it's even higher, the percentage. If with machines around 70%, with the records is around 90%. Like this very weird ad is that, again, is aimed to somebody who has a shop. Is when you are short, the men usually don't mind a substitution, women do. The idea is that if you don't have the record that the woman is coming to your shop asking for that, the woman is going to go to the next shop to find it. And the man doesn't care so much. He's like, oh, you don't have that dancing record, give me another one. So you better have the records. And it's very interesting, and they already say like 90% of the records. So in this, again, the Talking Machine World, you see advertisements that are, they are addressed to the seller, but saying like, do you carry the instruments he wants? Meaning, like, you have to have the phonograph or the gramophone that you really want, or the same, like, you should have these beautiful decorated flower morning glories, because that's what the woman is going to want. And I want to talk a little bit about the shopping experience. So, from what I could see so far, there were 3 ways of selling the machine, buying the machine. One was by mail. Especially here in Europe, I see a lot of advertisements with records that you could buy with numbers or just order, and they will send the machine or the records. Probably not the expensive ones, but. And then in America, I haven't found evidence in Europe. I don't rule them out, but in America, they also have this option, a little bit like what later in history became like the Tupperware parties. This is that one woman was in charge to sell gramophones, 2 or 3, or records. Let's talk about records because I think it was more accurate with records. So she went to a house and she invited all the women in the small village to come to her house, and they had a party with tea, biscuits, or whatever, or maybe liquor, I don't know. And then they played the records, and then the women in the friends, they just bought the things. Also, like with makeup and soap, they were doing it maybe later in the 40s or something. So that happened with the records and the machines, at least in America. I haven't found evidence here in Europe. I don't rule them out yet. Well, the second way of buying machines was a specific machines, specific stores. I've put some photos of some stores there. You have the Pathé one over there, the Salon of Phonography. That's a very old drawing. This is from Edison Bell, from a catalog from 1905, with a photo sharing. Yeah, the picture is, because it's a catalog I own and it's not in perfect condition, but still, so that's the photo, is a little bit dirty. And that's another example, I think it's in America. This is from a magazine, French magazine, and the advertise is about the shop. Pathé Silva is the shop. But what I really like, and it was the image from before, is how it's showing the shopping experience. Like, they have sofas, so the ladies come to the sofa, there is a seller, a female seller, who is like selling the machines. There are also men with recommendations and so on, but even this advertisement, that is an ad for the shop again, it's the main point, the central attention is like women selling to women. Also here, women selling to a man who comes from recommendation. And they also have lamps and stuff like that. So, department stores. The department stores were something that came out in the middle of the 19th century, late 19th century, in America, and they were very important for women. They were really built for women to go shopping. I mean, Macy's in New York is the first place to install toilets for women in a store, because they thought, okay, we want these women to spend the whole day there in a department store shopping and buying things. They have these corsets and these dresses, they need toilets. Something very absurd, because now we think that it's something very normal, but these little details is like this. Department stores were a place for women to buy. Maybe the specific stores, they were mostly maybe for men, although women were also buying, as we could see in the magazine, but it was very, very much for women. So in the department store, they had a huge space, maybe a store or something for gramophones, and they had these booths. That was very typical, to have booths. And in the booths, they have different machines, because the idea is that you went there and you could listen to the machine to see if you like it. But also, every booth or every little room was decorated in a particular style, so you could see if that machine fits in your living room. A little bit like IKEA, but with gramophones and things. So it was very common to see these booths, or just like very comfortable sitting places and stores. I'm now going to play you a little piece of a film that is in German from 1932 that recreates very well the shopping experience and what I was talking about. This film is about a record company that is running out of business and they have problems and blah blah blah. But in this scene, we are going to see how it works. There is very little text, and I will tell you what they say, and it's not so important. So the old lady comes into the shop. Important as the old lady.
Möchte etwas Hypermodernes, etwas zum Tanzen, etwas ganz Tolles für meine Enkelin.
So she asks, what would you like, what would you wish? It's like, well, I want something fast, something modern, something to dance for my granddaughter or my niece.
Ja, bitteschön.
So the seller knows what she wants and then she plays it. She's asking, is there any text with this music?
Du nach dir seh ich mich immer, du bei mir wird immer schlimmer, schenk mir noch nur einen Schimmer, Liebesglück. Ich kann gut fertig sein, doch machst du nie Gebrauch. Die Tränen laufen mir, doch du läufst leider auch davon. Oh, du. Und ich, die arme Jammer, Horschwärts, schlägt wie ein Hammer, doch der macht die Herzenskammer so nur du.
Wie kannst man das? Ich werde es meiner Enkelin vormachen.
How do you dance this? Because I want to demonstrate to my granddaughter. Well,
That's a promotion.
She's still be singing on the record. She writes the record. She won't get the singing.
No, but she was looking at so, did they, when she said text, did she mean were the lyrics separate from the record, or was somebody singing on the record?
well, they made it like that for the joke or something. She was saying literally something like, is there some lyrics coming along with this song or something like that? I mean, this is a film. And they wanted to make... But I think it's based in real stories, so to speak. I mean, this is 1932. So I think it's not like set in the past. It's set in their present. Like a recording store was like that. And it was very normal that an old lady or somebody comes to the store, sits in this sofa, like we saw in the photos before. In all these shops, there were sofas. Sits and talks to the whoever's in charge, very often a woman, as we are going to see now, and asks, I'm looking for the latest, I don't know, tango thing or foxtrot. Everything was a foxtrot, so I'm looking for the last foxtrot. And then the person who is selling the record had to know what is the latest foxtrot, and then listen, and if you can dance or whatever. Of course, it's a film and it's very funny, and also with the idea of the grandmother, the woman like putting an excuse of the thing, but I think it gives very well the idea of the...
I wouldn't like to meet the man in the dark night.
So, again, who was selling the machines? So, we've seen that women were buying the machines, but who were also selling the machines? So, very often, and especially in department stores, women were employed as sellers of records. Why? Because many women had musical education. They were at the conservatory, so they knew a lot about music. They could really easily use that knowledge. Also, in department store, it was very normal. They were employing women. But I think even today, when you go to a Harrods or something like that, you see mostly women. And for instance, in one of these articles, this is very interesting. It's about what requisites or how is a job interview for a saleswoman, what kind of questions they ask. And this woman is describing that. It's talking exactly about what I'm saying. Like, it's very it's very efficient that I'm going to read them now, so don't worry. It's very efficient that we hire women because these young women, they come to conservatories, they have music education, so they know a lot about these things. So to hire or not, the kind of questions that they were asked is who makes records of souvenir? Or what do you show when a customer asks you for way down upon the Swing River? What is the popular melody from Dvorak's New World Symphony? But what other names is known? Or make a well-balanced list of 12 Red Seal records. Name principal symphony orchestras who have recorded for Victor. Name 5 good Chrysler records. Or who are the principal pianists by Victor? Name several things listed in the blue sheet. What style voice possesses Shipa? Find La Paloma in a catalog. What's most popular number in Victor catalog composed by Rimsky-Korsakov? And you've probably, because I think you collect more records than even machines, you came across all this huge list of catalogs that they were coming every year or sometimes every, not month, but every few months or something like that. So the sellers, until 1929, until the crack, they were supposed to know almost by heart the new catalog, or they should know how to find the record. So this idea, like we saw in the movie before, of some customer coming and saying, hey, what is the latest thing that to dance or something, the sellers were really people who really had a very high knowledge and who really should know about music, and not just somebody like, because they didn't have internet or a computer to search for this kind of very difficult questions. So it was not easy. I don't think it was easy the way the market was like taking out so many records, and they should really know all the big hits in the different lists. And they were employ many women because they had time to study those catalogs, and they also had musical education. But women were not only working at the stores, they were also working at factories. And we have several photos and several images to prove that. Canada, Berliner, Pathé, both. This is a very early drawing. This is a most modern photo. These are in Germany, sorting and putting needles in needle boxes. And those were women behind the scenes working. And of course here, in the Edison Bell catalog from before, you have the first page that they advertise women at work. And in the last page is machines, and then you have men, which is very interesting. I also wonder that they explicitly say in this catalog women at work. I wonder if it's also because of the movement of the suffragette. Like Edison, because Edison Bell in this catalog, well, you know this catalog because you have reprinted in the series. They were really trying to prove themselves as an independent brand from Edison the America, saying like, well, we are proudly making our own machines. We are not only selling foreign machines and things like that. So, but anyway, women, they were employing women, maybe also because they were cheaper and grand. But they were in the industry. And going again to this marketing advertisements and statistics about who was buying or selling the machines. This is another article again from the Talking Machine World, and they were asking for real, like who is really buying the machines, and here with the statistics. So sales to men, for instance, 20%, like only men. Sales to women, 42%. Sales to both, 37%. But when they are asked they all agree that when men and women come together, it's the woman who has the last word, or the man says something like, well, whatever she wants, or things like that. Thinking about money also, even if the money was, a woman was not independent to have the bank account, as Howard was commenting before, she was in charge of deciding many things, like what to buy at home and so on, and she was in charge of deciding the gramophones. So in this article they also discuss what kind of arguments for marketing do the sellers use when they are selling to men against what are they using when they are selling to women. And you see here that for men they talk, most of them, about tone quality or the mechanisms, brand they both talk. And when they are trying to sell for women, they are talking about the beauty of the design, the tone quality, and also the brand and things like that.
Interesting that the women don't mention price at all, but the men think it's the fourth most important because they've got to pay for it.
Yes. I mean...
And only the women are asked what the neighbours have got.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Absolutely fascinating.
Yes, I mean that. If you think about the Victor, the first thing that I was showing, the one with the yellow dress, is the neighbor who is jealous. So there are, and again, these things is not how men or women felt for real. I mean, this is the people who were doing marketing or the people who were selling, how they perceive the gender roles in this case. I think it's important to make this decision because I'm sure there were women who were very much into, especially if they were operating the machines, they became very professionals and they were really like wanting to get the most sound of this or that, and they were also interested in the technical parts, and also I'm sure a lot of men were also interested in how something looked in the living room. But still, that was kind of like the idea. This commercial from Columbia, for instance, it recreates how the buying experience works. Like the man looks at the magazine, says, "Oh, look at this beautiful Columbia Graphonola. Let's go and see it." And then she listens to it and it's like, "Oh, it's wonderful, can we have it today?" And then they get home and they buy it. But in the final thing, you see that she's minding her own business and listening. The kids are very much looking at the machine, but the man is looking at the woman. So the man bought the graphonola, the gramophone, to make the woman happy. And that over there is an article from a book that Christine Frederick wrote that is called Selling Miss Consumer. This is a very interesting book about marketing, and it's about selling everything. This is like a section about the gramophones and the phonographs, but it's not about it's about everything, and it's saying like, hey, we are in the heart of the capitalism here, and we want to sell things, machines, and we should, and most of the women market, the women are deciding a lot of the things that they are taking home. So we should also make marketing and advertisements for them, and we should take them into account. Her book is about that. About the machines, it's very, very interesting what she says. Men apparently respond most readily to action appears, women to visual appears. A man is very greatly interested in what a thing does, whereas Miss Consumer is much more interested in how it looks. The automobile, the radio, and the phonographs are classic examples of this difference. Women dislike these contraptions, and they did not attain their present widespread vogue until they were designed and built for the pleas of women. I remember how I resented when my husband first bought into the parlor the messy-looking box called a radio set, and how was I annoyed that the acid from the battery could spoil my rugs. The pleasure in hearing it did not compensate the dislike of its unsightly appearance. Now, of course, radio is an elegant, decorative article of furniture, and the same evolution occurred in the case of the phonographs. So, the idea is when the machine appears at the beginning, if the woman doesn't like it because it looks too much like a machine, it doesn't look like a beautiful thing that she can put in her living room, she's not interested and they are not going to buy it. So the companies making all these things, they have to adapt it to it. And what I find very interesting of this is that she talks about the radio. Because the radio came in it came before, but it started to be a thing like in the 20s, mid-20s, late 20s, and in the 30s. And I can see a difference there between the radio or the gramophone. In any case, this, what I was talking about how the publicity was addressed for men or for women, is something that already by the 30s, all these marketing studies, they really, really suck into the publicist, and you can see difference. These advertisements, for instance, from Thomson, French, you see here, it's more or less the same idea. Yesterday, you dress with that dress, with the hat, and you have that kind of patephone. But today, you dress modern, today is 1930, and you have that kind of machine. So, fashion thing. Yesterday, you had the old open horns, today you have that. And here, the same evolution. In 1900, you had like the thing with the morning glory and that kind of car, and today you are a modern woman, dressed more like in the style of the 30s, and have that kind of thing. So, in the same magazine, the same brand Thomson makes these ads that are clearly addressed for men. And here we see very different. And what is also interesting is that even if it's the same Thomson brand, for women they advertise gramophones, and for men radios. So we have a lot of technological details about how marvelous the radio is. This idea of tradition and experience with the new generation, and these photos, very 30s by the way, with looking at the new components and the valves and so on. And I like very much that it's the same magazine, the same brand, the same everything, and it's like the people who were doing these advertisements, they were clearly like, this is for men, this is for women. Very, very different, very clear. And with this thing about the radio, and the perception that I have that the advertisements for radios, they are mostly addressed to men, while the advertisements that come in these like 2030s, for women, they are most about gramophones and not so much radio. I found this ad that I like very much because, well, we know that at the end of the 20s, they came with these machines that they combine both radio and gramophone. So in this ad, the idea is like, so we compromise because Billy wanted the new radio and I wanted a new Victrola. So this idea, it turns already about that. Like the radio is for men, the gramophone or reproducing records is for women. And here it explains it very, very well. I have to look more into this, but starting because I'm finishing my research now with the crack, and the radio is like just appearing. So anyway, and I don't want to finish without having a small thought reflection about what we've been talking today. I've been talking today because I've been talking about machines most of the time. I've been talking about phonographs and gramophones and how they change and how I believe that women really had something to say in the shape of the machines as furniture, and they really contribute to the history of these machines. But I haven't talked about records and what was recorded and these kind of things. And this, I'm just like throwing a question to the air, and I want to leave it open. Because if the statistics that we've seen before, they say that around 70% of the decisions about machines were taken by women, with records, it was around 90%. And the more articles I read, they go all in that direction. They are like, well, for granted that the records, they are being bought by women. So what I wonder is, until what point these capitalists work? Like this, if women were buying the records, were they also deciding what music was being recorded or not? I think it's a very, very complex question. It doesn't have an easy answer. It will probably need to go brand by brand, or, well, no, company, don't call it brand. Like, for instance, Edison clearly didn't care. He didn't care about the record, who was buying the things. He didn't care about, he didn't hire the big names because he just was only recording the people he wanted. So with Edison, it's clear, the answer. But what about all the different labels? If they were selling mostly to women, were the women shaping the things that have been recorded or not? And I just wanted to finish with that question up in the air. I don't have an answer, and I think it's too complex even to go into that. But I just wanted to leave it open because it's something that is there. So thank you very much for listening, for the talk. I will be very happy if we have some questions or debate. So thank you.
Thank you very much. That's fascinating. I hadn't realised that quite the involvement with the ladies of the council. Would you say that was reflected in what you found out Europe being exactly the same as in America?
And here?
Yeah, in Europe.
Yes, I think there is a relation. There are differences, but I think the markets were working very much the same. I had a problem doing research here in the UK. I'm sorry to say this, but the British Library suffered a cyber attack, and I cannot access to British newspapers because, even this morning I went to the British Library and all the computers are still down. And whenever they open, because they solve their own problems, I will go and look at them.
Can I suggest you try the Science Museum Library?
Okay.
Because they have gramophones, they have sound systems, and they may, I don't know whether they've been subsumed by the British Library, but if they haven't, they may have an independent system. You may be able to access things.
Thank you for the...
You can get the National Newspaper Archive.
Yeah.
Although it's to do with the BL, for some reason you can get to that through Find My Past.
It was sold off.
Well, it used to be called, it isn't anymore. No. But, that's online, lots of stuff on there. Talking Machine News up to 1980s online there. I was looking at it only yesterday.
Okay, well, there are some things that... But that was also like annoying, but I will try.
I think, talking about women selling records, all the sort of pictures I can think of in the 20s and 30s of record shops, gramophone shops they were then, you get women buying, but the people serving are always men. I can't think of any picture I've ever seen of women serving behind the counter.
Well, I show you a couple of them before.
Well, in England?
They were from America. I
think it might be different in America.
Were there different shops? So when you were talking about department stores, there's a lot of record shops we heard about shop there's the bloke on the corner who's got a record shop. They're own businesses.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I suspect a small shop down the high street might be different from a big department.
Could be, yeah.
I don't know. So, just sort of thought, Fred Lawrence and his records. Remember what's his name, and Arthur thingy with Dennis Madden and all that.
What you might be interested in regards talking about the influence of what the record companies would play, recorded, goes right up really to the 60s, the mid-60s, with the Beatles and the Stones, because they were almost not allowed to say if they had girlfriends. But if they did, the young fans really wouldn't like it. So there's a lot of power there. It's not quite the same now. People seem to be quite happy to say, yeah, we're married and things, it's all right now. But then it was dodgy. So I watched a Beatles doc recently, and it was very noticeable.
Also, those women in these department stores, they were not, or working in anything, secretaries, everything, they were not allowed to be married.
Can I suggest a reason? And there probably are people in the room who know more about this than I do, and you'll correct me if what I'm saying is rubbish. But the reason possibly why there's a distinction between selling phonographs and gramophones to women and radios to men is that when the technology of the radio came out, it was wonderfully exciting. A lot of boys made radios out of bits. My dad did. He was born in 1911, and as he was growing up, he made a series of radios out of bits. So there would have, and he was poor, so there would have been a generation of boys. I don't know why the girls didn't make radios, and that would be an interesting thing to know from the time. But the boys made radios, so in selling them the finished thing, they might actually understand what the different bits inside are because they've handled them, soldered them together, and listened to their favourite dance band.
As the lady said in Aurea's talk, the reason that the woman writing the article about men and women buying radios is that even when it was commercially made, her fear of a bottle of acid being brought into her house. So, it was not being totally sexist, but a woman was not really happy with the idea of handling a tub of sulfuric acid. but the man did.
Not sexist at all.
Well, why shouldn't they? Men were.
Another point regarding men and wirelesses, of course, I would suggest is sport. Men like to hear the ball game, they like to hear the cricket, they like to hear the horse racing, which is more a masculine pursuit in that era.
Interestingly, up until 1922, as we know, women's football was huge until the Football Association outlawed it. That was for another day.
You just made a very good point, because of course sports are held on Saturday, which is when the man is off. But and the music programmes went out in the evening, didn't they, on the BBC for men and women to enjoy together. So the radio became the man's domain, perhaps, on the Saturday afternoon when the racing and the football and the cricket was on.
Can I just throw in a little bit of, sorry, it's going off on a slight tangent, a little bit of CLPGS history. But as the banner there says, we were founded in 1919, and we were originally the City of London Phonograph Society. When this weird and newfangled thing began to take off called wireless, for at least 10 years we were the City of London Phonograph and Radio Society. And then eventually people saw the light and they crossed out radio.
Saw the light?
And put gramophone instead. But for many years we were the City of London Phonograph and Radio Society.
Yes, although in fact we only actively had radio for a very short time. They discovered, within a year or two that no one really wanted to bother with it.
They thought this was a wonderful new trend and they should be on board. And
there are these lines in some magazines also that when the radio came, they are like also wireless, and then they became only radio or whatever. So.
What was the early history of radio in Spain? Was it a single state-owned company like Britain, or was it various private radio stations?
This year, I don't know, it's 2024 or 23, is the centenary of the first emission of the first radio station, Catalonia.
Catalonia.
But they came later all together, and there were programs. I think it was a private radio, and then the national radio came, but first was a private one.
Aurea, I wonder, I know nothing, or virtually nothing about advertising and marketing, but the role of women as consumers and how the marketing was targeted. I wonder if anybody here, or if it's something you're thinking of looking at, modern marketing theory, how things are pitched differently at women as a target audience versus at men as a target audience.
Today? Yes, today there are differences. Just look at some ads.
But looking at it academically, I wonder if there's any trends or things you can see there that you can trace back to 100 years ago and more.
Yes, but I don't want to really follow the line, because I think with the crack of the 29 there was a big, the same as the First World War was a big day and night. In the 29 there was a big change, and then you have the Second World War. So I wouldn't like to trace this kind of Darwinistic way of looking at history. I prefer to look at history in bits. and then put them together. And maybe there is a line, but very often it's more like waves. Like you have this here, because after the 30s, from what I've seen, the market changed completely. Even the record labels, they don't make these catalogs. I mean, they make these catalogs with a lot of things, but they are not the people selling the records, they are not supposed to know them as they knew before, because they didn't have, I mean, they were not employing so many people, they couldn't afford. Things changed so drastically, and then you have the war, the Second World War. So I don't dare to say.
Okay, no, fair enough. That's good.
I wonder if that abandoning of the catalogues had to do with the emergence of radio, so that many people's primary knowledge of popular music would be through the radio and records, but that would be how the knowledge was acquired rather than the study of catalogues. So if you wanted to employ a really savvy young woman in order to sell records, you'd need somebody who'd done the work in terms of listening to the radio and absolutely being on top of what was, what's selling now, what are people looking for, why do they want it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Idea that catalogues, because we're all familiar with the HME annual catalogues, but they stopped publishing in the late 50s. After that, you only had dealer catalogues and big cloth-bound catalogues. So I suppose it's a combination of the vinyl and radio and things like that that rendered catalogues.
I think this gentleman is right here, because also when thinking in our childhood, the top 10 was formed by collating major sales from several good sources. But once the things had reached a level, they were then played mercilessly on the radio, which then drove the sales in turn. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, wasn't it? And I imagine that after the great crash in America, when radio was very big, and there was a lot of dance music played on the radio, what was heard on the radio was then bought in the shops in greater quantity than what wasn't heard on the radio. So it was a different kind of driving force.
The radio must have just completely changed.
Yes, changed, yeah.
Completely different subject. What was the name of that film, and is it available?
On YouTube.
Yeah.
I've seen only bits of it.
Because it's great.
And the film is...
The song of Kiss the Girl.
And the song is that thing, but...
Kiss the Girl in German.
A song...
A song of Kiss a Girl.
I'm worried about you. Girl.
I'm right,
His name's Frolic. Didn't look much like a frolic to me.
1932.
Is it actually available on YouTube? Very curious.
I found in YouTube the little bits of the film, like this song and the other song or something. I haven't found the whole film yet, but I will. If I find it or something, I will send you the links and we can share it or something. Because I'm also very curious. I also want to see it.
I think some of the things we're talking about, the separation between male and female, are less now in general, and some of them sometimes are almost used more as a joke than a serious thing. So I remember when I bought some very large loudspeakers back in the 1970s, and my wife wouldn't have minded, but my friend said, God, you need to put a vase of flowers on top of them so she won't notice. And that is like going back to it, but it was a joke. And also, I must put, if I go into a shop to buy some aftershave, if it's got something for men, I don't buy it. I just want I don't care. I think that is ridiculous, and that is got going away a bit.
Yeah. Things are changing. Yeah.
Right, well, thank you so much. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.